I'm sorry to interject, but we appreciate all the details regarding what you intend to do in the future. But if I may, just chime in here a little bit as to the question that I raised earlier, and that is how could this happen? Referring to the audit's result, would it be correct to say that the main reason for the issue is lack of resources? That's what I heard. One thing that I heard so far, and if so, then what when was the last time your department asked for resources? And I wanted to put it on the table. I understand that your department has a budget of about $370 million, and you have 900 people working for you currently. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
And how much of that budget is devoted to cybersecurity issues whatsoever?
I don't have that number.
Ballpark?
Several million.
Several million? And when was the last time your department submitted a BCP, budget change proposal?
We just recently, this past session.
Over the last 5 years, you only submitted one budget change asking for resources?
No, and the one prior.
One prior, so the total of 2 BCP submitted?
Our department in totality has asked for BCPs or submitted BCPs for other areas in security as well at the data center.
But I'm referring to just cybersecurity issues.
Well, and I don't know if I can refer. I don't have that level of detail.
My understanding is there's only one BCP requested over the last 5 years, and that was a recent BCP. So your answer was lack of resources, but we have to know what resources you guys need before we help out. And it's kind of frustrating to see that over the last 5 years you only submitted one recent BCP asking for resources, and here at the hearing you're informing us that lack of resource was the reason for the auditor's report. Is that not the case?
That was one of the main reasons for the deficiencies.
So then the follow-up question would then be, why didn't you ask for the resources earlier?
So I've been in the position and an ability to influence that for 2.5 years. And so you can see that I did do that at the onset and through establishing resources to begin validation.
Well, just answer the question, please. The BCP was submitted recently, was it not?
Yes, but there was one prior to that as well.
That was for cybersecurity?
Yes.
Okay, when was it submitted?
That was the 13-14.
13-14 fiscal year?
Yes.
Okay. So I know you still have a little bit of information to present, but I want to start the line of questioning, if I may. Given the failure reported by the auditor's office, how do you ensure that we as a body can still be assured that you could oversee the agencies in a more effective or competently manner?
I'm here today to help you understand what our plan and path forward is for doing that. Okay. I know you were provided with some handouts where I'll outline the strategy, the state government strategy for doing just that. Okay.
All right. I'll let you go back to your presentation, but if you can kind of succinctly go forward.
Okay. So each of the activities are part of an overarching strategy in your handout on page 2, if you have the handout from our office. So on page 2 of the handout, you find the strategy for state government consists of 4 key elements. It's comparable to a Plan, Do, Act model. This is a 4-step model for carrying out the change that's needed to address the issues identified in the auditor's report. And it's a continuous process cycle or continuous improvement cycle. On page 3, there's an illustration of strategic risk management approach. This is supported through the use of the standards that we've adopted for the state. You can see that the approach is 3-tiered, examining risk at organizational, business, processing, and information system levels, while promoting organization-wide risk awareness and accountability for risk-based decisions. So 2 years ago, immediately following my being appointed to the position, we updated the policy to provide clarity on what the state standards are and what the expectation was for departments to comply with those. We provided extensive training to help agencies understand. These are widely adopted industry standards that facilitate, again, the interorganizational sharing and exchange of equipment, data, software, and personnel needed to sustain states' essential government programs.
Make sure everyone's on the same document.
Yes.
Hi. Sorry, hello. Shonda Chaudhry, Legislative Liaison for the Department of Technology. Just wanted to make sure that everybody had the same document in front of them. Okay.
All right. So state entities, many of them are required to adhere to these standards if they are receiving federal funds and federal dollars. So it's important, I think, to recognize that any standard that's adopted will require organizational investment and a similar level of effort. Compliance, as you heard earlier, compliance with these can be achieved and is being achieved by a number of organizations. On page 4 of your handout is the 6-step risk management framework. And I wanted to clarify and address some earlier questions with respect to the framework and how it works. It does provide flexibility for departments to establish certain thresholds for some of the controls, not all of the controls. So it will specify, let's say, for example, you need a timeout on your computer screen, okay, to protect it from someone coming up if you step away from your desk or your office. That threshold of timeout, which is referred to timeout, can be set, excuse me. May differ based on the environment. The environment could be that you are a closed office of personnel analysts that no one else can get in there without approved or authorized badge access. So the screen lock timeout may not need to be set the same as it is for an office that's open to the public and anyone can just walk in and perhaps walk up to someone's desk if they've stepped away from it and essentially access the same data. So the standard allows for flexibility based on the risk assessment that's conducted for the department. And we feel that's important because in some settings, it may be essential that they have that flexibility. An example is a hospital setting. So doctors need ready access to patient medical records. So your timeout features on equipment may not be the same as if they are more stringent in an office that doesn't have that same level of availability. So there are supplemental guidance.
We have a question, Mr.
I'm
Cooper.
sorry.
I have a question about training. I know you're talking about timeouts, but just if you get up on a training issue, lock your computer, number one. I think that's simple.
Yeah.
And then number two, you talked about training earlier, and it goes back to why are people being forced to come to Sacramento for training? Why isn't training being pushed out to these agencies that are statewide? Because like I said, when it comes down to it, I mean, yeah, IT does get part of the budget and they travel, but most, line employees don't really go anywhere, so...
Some training is provided online, basic user awareness training, but again, in some of the trainings, we feel it's important that they come where they can experience the actual hands-on application of that training. So, for example, how to conduct a risk assessment. We can lecture on how to do that, but if they are in person, we can actually facilitate an exercise following the lecture that reinforces how to do that.
But why can't you take that down to one of the agencies, say in Southern California, and get a group of people there together versus flying everybody up here? I mean, that's
exactly what we're willing to do.
But in the past, it hasn't been done. And correct me if I'm wrong, it hasn't been done that way.
No,
most
it
of the training's
hasn't
taken place. Pardon?
It has not in the past, but we have met one-on-one with departments in the past, and we'll continue to do that and increase that activity.
But that's troublesome because we're here in 2016, and that's kind of standard with agencies being so big that we've been pushing that out for years. So I mean that should be the standard more so than bringing folks up here. It's more effective training wise and dollar wise too with the citizens' money.
Appreciate that.
Ms. Chang has a question also. Go ahead, please.
I also just want to follow along the lines of what Mr. Cooper was just saying, and also following up with one of my questions earlier regarding the framework. I know you had just mentioned the NIST framework, and again, I don't believe that it establishes controls. So, and I'm sure you're going to be addressing this, but do you believe that the security controls baseline is sufficient at the state level as you see it right now?
We are in the process of looking at those control areas where it allows the department to define the parameter. And we may be recommending or proposing policy that actually sets a minimum threshold for some of those.
So there should be a baseline foundation, a foundation of control, security controls.
So the current policy does establish a baseline that they have to have these minimum controls in place. Some of those minimum controls allow them to set a specific threshold for the control itself based on the risk analysis in their environment.
Do you believe they're sufficient?
Some of them, yes. Some of them, no. And that's why we are looking at that from a policy development perspective.
Thank you.
Chair Owen. You have a question?
You've described a lack of resources in the department. Are there certain responsibilities that you think should be moved to other departments? And specifically, would it be better if OIS moved out from the CIO and functioned independently?
I don't know that I have a position on that right now. I'd have to.
Okay, so what about the broader question? Are there functions of the department that should be moved to other departments?
I don't.
I'm sorry. Are there? Say that one more time. Are there functions of the department? So to answer your question, we have only been, so IT has only been consolidated under one roof for a few years. And so, yes, there's still room for growth, but the current structure is working. I think you heard CHP talk about the various threats that we see every single day. And in just the time that we've been here, our Office of Technology Services have successfully blocked hundreds of attempts, again, just in the time that we've been sitting here. The examples that you've cited earlier were not examples of state entity cyber incidents. Folks are making attempts, and we are doing a good job. And so we've only been the Department of Technology for 2 years. I think we need some more time to continue to evolve. The threats are always changing, but we're really ahead of the game here.
So, I mean, we're looking at the auditor report. It's very disturbing, I think, to all of us that are in an oversight role. And you're saying you've only been around for 2 years, so when can we start to expect changes? And you know, that we don't have to keep going through this exercise. When can we start to see improvements?
Well, hopefully you're seeing some improvements that we've made and reported out on today. We've made a number of significant changes to the program and are continuing to do so. We're on the path to automate so that we can continue to work with you all and provide you with metrics, performance metrics that you would like to see. And we believe our new tool that we're in the process of implementing will do that. Currently, we provide you with an annual report on metrics that I understand the legislature had asked to see, and that's on the slides, the page 7 of your handout. And we are seeing a reduction in the number of, with respect to the security metrics. We're seeing improvement there. And I think we'll continue to see that as we, as an administration, continue to better organize and unify in this area. But there, I can assure you, there's a lot of coordination and cross-coordination with the various entities, and extremely well-established partnerships that are working and making improvements.
Okay, and then just one other question, and this is from your handout here. So you're tasked with developing Emergency Function 18,
Yes.
and you have the work in progress for clarifying the authorities' roles and responsibilities. Where are you on that?
So yes, we're designated the technical lead to establish the cybersecurity annex to the state emergency plan. We're working very closely with Cal OES's Emergency Function 5 advocacy team. They provide support to the technical leads in the development of the annex, and so we've been meeting monthly. We have on this page 6 of your handout is the general outline of the process to establish an annex. And so we have engaged the stakeholders, both state and local government and private industry. We have a working group, again, that meets monthly. And then the next phase is clarifying the authorities' roles and responsibilities. We've completed that for the state government component, and we're looking at the other jurisdictions now, and that's in progress.
What do you think your timeline will be to finish that function?
I think we should be able to finish the functional annex within 6 months. And I know there is a draft concept of operations currently under consideration.
Thank you.
If I may ask a couple of follow-up questions. How many data breaches did you experience last year? 100 and some thousand? Is that what you said?
No.
And can you define data breach?
Yes. So in the last page 7 of your handout.
Got it.
There were 104, and then of those, 9 of them involved personally identifiable information.
Good. Was there an estimate of the cost for these data breaches?
We do have that number. I don't have that with me today. I'm happy to follow up with that.
Ballpark? Not even ballpark. Now, you also mentioned...
How many were resulted from a computer intrusion?
It's a component of the 104 number. But
Not the entire.
right.
Now, you also mentioned about the performance metric, and I understand that you produce that report annually, and we were able to obtain a copy of that report, in fact, the entire report from your website. And if I may direct your attention to the page regarding performance metrics, on the first page of that report, under infrastructure rationalization for a number of servers, physical servers, from 2011 all the way through 2015, you have data not available. And under services metric, you have public satisfaction with online services. You have not applicable all the way through from 2011 through 2015. And under service level objectives, you also have not applicable all the way across from 2012 and 2015. First question, why were they included in your report if they're not applicable, if data is not available? And instead of these metrics, why aren't you including information such as the cost of these data breaches, for example, your annual budget and the like?
So I would have to defer to our operations, our data center operations, for the first part of your question. The second one, with respect to metrics, I think we're looking at working with you to understand what you would like to see so that we can update that. There's a statutory requirement that we provide notice before doing that, before making any changes to these. And understand these were have been longstanding established metrics that may not be what you are currently interested today. So we look forward to working with you to establish additional or modified performance metrics.
Absolutely. So, if I'm not mistaken, the entire performance metric is on one page or one and a half page, and that's pretty simplistic. A little too simplified, I think. And you mentioned about the data breach page. The trend basically was going up, and then it went down from 2011 to 2012. The number of data breaches went up, and then between 2014 and 15, it went down. What was the reason for the data breach decline the last year, and was that information contained anywhere?
I think a lot has to do with increased awareness and focused attention in this area.
Okay. All right. Okay, so if you can finish up your presentation, we have a few more questions after that, please.
Okay. So I just wanted to highlight with respect to the metrics that more than 75% of the incidents, either suspected or actual, reported to our office are not computer-related incidents. So as you heard earlier, a number of industry reports, the Office of the Attorney General's report, our partners at Highway Patrol, the trend is information handling errors, and most of those involve paper records. So that is an issue we are focused on addressing with state agencies right now. There is a slight uptick in the malware pieces, but I did want to add clarity that we do have an information sharing process. The example that was provided earlier where where a department experiences a malware incident, that information is shared with our office, and then it's turned around and shared more broadly so that other departments in our state government can protect themselves. In fact, I can tell you that members of the legislature, IT folks, they are on our distribution list and receive those bulletins as well. So we're sharing with other branches of government and higher education, not just our state government executive branch folks. So I appreciate, again, the opportunity to be here, and we'll take additional questions.
Sure. Thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions, Mr. Albanalti?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we all recognize that it's a difficult position that you're in. It's not easy to sit in that seat and answer these kind of questions when the legislature's acting in an oversight role, which is what we're doing today. But I have to say that I am very alarmed by the auditor's report. And the most alarming aspect of the report, from my point of view, is the fact that your department was unaware of the status of compliance of the other state departments. And what I was really hoping to hear you say today was, we acknowledge the problem, we take responsibility for it, and we will fix it. And I think that's what we would really like to hear, and I'm hoping to hear you say that.
We acknowledge the problem and I'll take full responsibility for it.
Okay, and I'd really like to, I look forward to working with you in future oversight hearings to monitor your progress as you solve the problem, because I think this is something that you're taking responsibility for. We're taking responsibility for our job in overseeing your department, and we're looking forward to working with you on the solution.
And if I may just follow up on actually Assembly Members Gordon's comment regarding the lack of a central a focal person, a point person, so to speak. So is it your understanding that all departments are working effectively and as far as cybersecurity is concerned?
There has been a true effort to enhance coordination among the multiple agencies. Each of them has a specific role, and the majority of it is governed by statutory authorities. And I think what we have in place is working well and can be built upon.
Would you say that if we were to point to one person when it comes to cybersecurity for California, who would that person be? I understand that various departments are responsible for different tasks in that area.
Yeah, and my purview would be the state government entities. We have a Homeland Security advisor for the state, which I believe you'll hear from shortly.
Would you say that that department would be the point department then when it comes to cybersecurity?
Maybe. It more encompasses critical infrastructure. They have a critical infrastructure protection division to address those areas.
All right. Any other questions?
But I do think between us, we have the areas covered.
You have a question? Okay. Well, thank you very much, ladies, for joining us today, and we hope to continue to working with you in the years to come. We do have some issues, as you realize, and the intent is not to basically put you on the spot. I think the ultimate goal and the intent of this hearing and with everybody is that we want to identify what the problems are, and then hopefully we can provide you with more resources going forward, and that's why we have the line of questioning, and we wanted to help you succeed, because when you succeed, then we succeed, and California also succeeds. So I hope you have, get that message across. I mean, we get that message across to you as well. So we'll be working as a team. So, with that, if there are no further questions, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I would like to call up the California Military Department, Major General Matt Beavers, who's the Deputy Adjutant General. And I think we just have you up here for questions, unless you want to make a quick opening.